Joining us now to talk about it and use whatever metaphors they wish, be they football, food or anything else. The wonderful Laura Jays, you can see her each and every morning, 9 o'clock Eastern. Andrew Clennell, you can see him 24 hours a day, and if there was an 8th day, he would find a way to be on the campaign trail for us here at Sky News. Love you both. Thank you for sticking around, and I appreciate that you're holding off, running off to that pokey room and rubbing 50 against the Queen of the Nile for me. I do appreciate it. Although, if you'd like to, I'm more of a lightning man. All right, Andrew, we heard you before with Sharry that you think it was one of the best performances you've ever seen when it comes to Peter Dutton. Laura, your thoughts on what we just watched and the result? Albo wins. Not a majority, but 44-35, 21 undecided.
Yeah. Yep, and we've seen this in people's forums before, and the result at election day can be very different. I think Andrew is correct. This is Peter Dutton's strongest performance. He was affable, he was consistent, he was considered, absolutely. It seemed like for the Prime Minister this was a bit of a fire drill, but he did have some clever lines up his sleeve about gaslighting Australia, and also, you know, how can Peter Dutton stand up for Australians when he can't even stand up for his own policy? We can get to that a little bit later, but essentially in a diabolically anti-ambitious, low-rent campaign. The campaigning starts now. You can mark this as day one of this election campaign, because this is when people will start to engage, because so far it has been absolutely diabolical. The questions to each leader every day, the obfuscating, the pivoting, as you say, Paul. I think tonight provided that opportunity, as we see time and time again in election campaigns, for leaders to stand side by side. What it does is this benefits Peter Dutton in many ways, because what it has done tonight as well, you've seen Paul Albo standing up every day saying Peter Dutton this, Peter Dutton does that, he's not going to do this, he's going to cut, and really campaigning like an opposition leader. When they're standing side by side in this room, which is very tense at times, he can't do that. So it kind of it takes that nastiness out of it. It takes that weapon, the biggest weapon that Anthony Albanese has. And I think it benefited Peter Dutton today. By the way, I caught up with Ian the truckie outside. Good. And if this is anything to go by, he's a Dutton man.
Doesn't surprise me. Doesn't surprise me. They're and most likely a Kevin Bloody Wilson man as well. Now, let's get to you, Andrew, here, because I love that, again, not only are you around the political types, but you go and do the door knock. I think this is one of the great things that you've brought to our coverage, apart from insight and all the rest of it, because you talk to normal people, right? And you get to see that immigration question, it can be sticky, right? A place like Wentworthville, 20 years ago, yep, Wenty Leagues was more of its cultural hub. 20 years later, and you would remember from the last time you went anywhere near the joint at the last campaign, or in many times in between, there's about 1 billion more units that are in there. The suburb has changed, Western Sydney has changed. So immigration, you've got to be careful how you talk about it, but Dutton did try to go out of his way to talk about the positives of the migration story, just the number is the issue.
Yeah.
I think Peter Dutton won the debate. I thought it was his best performance, but I think it's of large concern to him, Paul, that he didn't win the vote. Because if he can perform that well and not win the vote amongst undecided voters, it's not a good sign. And I've got to say, the reason I will put this down to is Labor's winning the issues. So Trump was a question, health were questions.
Correct.
This is what Labor's campaigning on. Now, this becomes a chicken or egg question, by the way. Did Labor create this narrative, or did the focus groups create this narrative for Labor and they took advantage of it? But you didn't hear Peter Dutton talk about the threat from China, for example, or defence spending. He could have gone down that route. We could have got a question in relation to that issue. Those are his kind of issues. Where he was able to prosecute an issue really well, deficit and debt. The problem is that since COVID, people now have a different view of deficit and debt. And that was the clearest explanation he'd given yet as to why he's gone the fuel excise, a temporary targeted measure, as we saw during COVID, which doesn't harm the budget long term. And I thought that was a very strong argument. From my door knock here, really solidified by tonight, both times you saw arguments for migration, in terms of they're concerned about how Peter Dutton will treat migrants, and against the massive amount of immigration, which I think a lot of Australians would think is just way over the top. Yeah. But these electorates have changed. Where I grew up, Paul, in Perth, has changed massively. It is much more multicultural, and that's where you get seats like Parramatta, Bennelong, Tangney. This is a different voting audience to when Tony Abbott won in 2013, and that is why you have to have a different approach if you're going to win the election. Now, ultimately, what's happened tonight will give Peter Dutton confidence. He's back in the game. We have a race, but he's still behind.